Hey everyone, it's Austin and welcome back to the channel. It's day 193 on my journey to 2000, where today is another special episode where I will be recapping my tournament this past weekend. Today we're going to be going over round 3 in the tournament, where this is our first classical game. It's 90 minutes per side with a 5-second delay. I won the first round, I lost the second round, and without further ado, let's swap the scene. Flip on the tunes and begin discussing. So I have to give you guys some background. If anything, this is probably the most important game that we need to review together because I met one of my subscribers at this tournament. His name's Alex. Awesome guy. He's a part of the Discord. Check out the Discord if you haven't already. He lives in Maryland, and he said that he registered for the tournament. We met up and chatted, between round 1, in between round 1 and 2, and then sure enough, we get paired for round 3. So not only did I get to meet him this day, we got paired against each other as well, which was like, oh my gosh, out of, the 36 people in our section, that's so crazy. So with that being said, I have the white pieces. This was the first tournament he said he could really remember. Apparently he played a couple times when he was a kid, so he has this 451 rating, but he's much stronger than that. So I play d4, he plays d5. You already know we play bishop f4, and he goes for an immediate c5. So I play e3, just kind of working through the opening. He goes for early bishop f5. So against an early c5, my first priority normally is to close the pawn triangle, so if he takes with the c-pawn, I can take back with the e-pawn. I'm not thinking too much about his bishop. I want to go c3 and get my queenside knight developed, so that way I can play more on the queen side. He plays e6, which is another important thing to note, that his light square bishop is officially locked out of the pawn chain. So now any knight f3 ideas could also come with knight h4 ideas. And, I could stand to win the light square bishop, which is fantastic. I play knight d2. We already saw this coming. It's really important when they're playing early c5 stuff to develop your queenside pieces, so that way you can play on the queen side where they're developing. And he goes queen b6. This is a very testing line in my opinion. So rather than trying to go up to b3, I know that he's just going to meet me with c4, and then I'm going to be kind of stuck. And I can't come back to c2 or nothing because his light square bishop covers that diagonal. So he plays knight f6, I go knight f3, knight c6, bishop e2, standard development stuff, and he plays c4 on his own. So this unlocks 2 triggers in my mind. c4 is pushed, the b3 pawn break and the e4 pawn break are now potentially very strong for me because I stand to split this c pawn off on its own. b3 specifically very strong because he can't back it up with b5 or anything, the queen is in the way. e4 specifically not as strong because he's controlling it a whole lot more than me. In a more standard position, this bishop would probably be inside of the pawn chain, and e4 might be more enticing, or perhaps it's just not developed yet. Like if the pawn is still on e7 and the bishop is back, maybe e4 is more of a potential. So those kind of keys unlocked in my mind. So I castle, and he goes knight h5. And I'm thinking, I ain't giving my bishop up for nothing. I don't want to come back and have him double my pawns. I don't want to go here and get f6. Like, here he can also just kind of ignore me and do anything. It's not like I'm hitting a queen or anything on d8. So he can kind of just ignore me. So I was like, all right, well, let me go to e5, so that way if takes, the knight is hit. Sorry about that. He comes back to f6 with his knight, and basically the only thing that changed is now I have a knight on e5, which seems like I'm gaining something. So that's what I do, and that's exactly what happens. and then I break with b3. He takes, I take back with the pawn. It may seem appealing to take back with the knight, just to get your knight to be more active, but this knight is actually doing a great job where it is, controlling the e4 square, potentially going to f3 and those kinds of things. And it's more beneficial to continue with the pawns to keep breaking away at his pawn structure. I mean, his king is still castled, or still in the center, and it's 2 moves away from being castled. So I just want to start breaking open the center, breaking open the center. All my pieces are developed. His aren't yet. So he plays knight into the center. And what he's trying to do here is, right now, the knight is the only piece defending the b3 square. So if I don't know, make some lazy move, then he could potentially take, queen takes, and then he wins a pawn. So I trade off this knight, and I'm thinking like, okay, I have to play like c4 has to happen, but if I play c4 now, my pawn just hangs, so let me defend my pawn. He goes here, developing, putting pressure on my knight, and preparing to castle. I'm like, there's no reason for me to let him take and double the pawns. The only reason that I might like an idea like that is if he has a knight on f6, then potentially the pawn on e5 might displace that knight and give me some good attacking chances. But here, there's basically no pieces on the board, so I just come back. He castles. I go rook fc1 to help, you know, just continue the idea of the plan, develop more pieces. He goes back with the queen, and I'm kind of like, all right, that's helpful because it's taking less pressure off of my queen. For example, if I were to push here right away, you know, I wouldn't be able to take with the pawn. So that's just another potential move that I have. And then of course I'm realizing that he's lining up a battery on my h2 square. Right now it's only defended by the knight, so what he's really threatening is if I just, I don't know, make a random move, he can take and then win the pawn. So that's not what the people want. So we just play h3, moving out of the way. He brings a rook to the center of the board, and I'm fully ready for c4. I'm like, yes, let's go, let's break it open. And here, tragedy struck. He played queen b6. And I kind of sat there for a minute. You know, it's a classical game. We have 16 minutes aside, so there's no reason for me to make moves fast. I kind of just sat here and double checked to make sure that I wasn't doing anything too stupid, and then c5 comes naturally. So he chose to lose the piece like this, where he took, and then I recaptured with tempo on the queen, and then he chose to go back to d8. And now to me, my plan is pretty straightforward. I have a 2-1-2 on the queen side, but all of my pieces are on the queen side. Even my bishop is somewhat pointed, even my bishop is somewhat pointed at the queen side. And depending on how he plays, I have the potential to make a passed c-pawn with the way that the pawns are configured right now. So that's my game plan, is push and make a passed c-pawn. So I push b4. He brings the queen over this way, and I'm not seeing any threats or feeling anything. Just kidding. It really was for a second in this position that I did not see that, like, the queens could see each other. I was just thinking like, okay, what is this? That's nothing. I'm not worried about that. And I'm like, oh my god, what if I just hung my queen? But I didn't. So I trade the queens. It doubles his pawns, and it gets the queens off the board where I'm already up a piece for a pawn, so this is perfect for me. b5 comes naturally. He goes king h8. For me, this was a pretty obvious idea. He wants to bring a rook to the open g file. I didn't really care. My idea is to make a passed pawn and have that help me win the game. He takes. I take back. He goes rook g8, just like I was saying. And now I'm thinking, I want to make sure that my bishop has full flexibility to get out. So let me just go ahead and play g3 now to bite this whole idea of the pin in the nub and make sure that if, you know, there is no pin and I can take back the knight or anything like that, I can just move the knight and there won't be any alignment of the rook and the bishop on this pawn. So he plays e5, which I thought was pretty good because I definitely wanted to move my knight to the center. So instead I go knight h4 with a very simple idea. I want to bring my bishop here and trade the bishops. I want to trade the pieces and I want to push my passed pawn and I want to win the game. So he pushes d4, which I thought was good. He's going for counterplay here. He wants to make a passed pawn. So he does, and then I continue with my plan, bishop f3. He actually takes, which I felt like wasn't super accurate. This was the first of several, or this was not the first time that, you know, we made a couple trades while I'm just up a piece. Definitely helps me out a lot. Take back, putting pressure on the pawn, so he pushes it. I attack the pawn. And he doesn't defend it. He actually goes to counterattack this pawn. But I don't have to take and take. I can just defend this pawn first, and I'm still attacking this pawn. So I defend it like this. And then he goes, I think his idea here is to go for active counterplay and not defend the pawn. If I was in his shoes, I feel like this is your biggest asset in the position and your biggest chance. I definitely think I would try to hang on to this. So I take. He starts bringing the king. It's an endgame. Okay. I go here to, you know, I'm looking at my pieces and I'm like, all right, what's not playing the game? My knight isn't playing the game. It can't really go anywhere important. This blocks the rook. If I go here to get to f5, this is a better idea than going to d4 to get to f5, because if I go to knight to d4, he can go to g6 and block the square, but if I go to knight h4, it covers that pesky g6 square and I can get in on the next move. So that's why I choose that. He goes a5. He has an outside passed pawn. He's trying to push it. He's trying to make chances. I give check. He brings his king forward, which I feel like is only good for me. There's still a lot of heavy pieces on the board. I feel like I could have checkmating chances and several attacking ideas. I just defend the knight. He comes forward again, and I'm just thinking the same thing. So I come up with rook to c5, threatening a discovered attack. You know, this wins a rook and probably leads to mate. There's probably even a better discovery that just leads to mate straight away if the wrong move gets played. He brings the king forward again, and I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I need to start taking squares away from his king, and I need to checkmate him. So I go king g2. He goes a4. And I'm just thinking like, purely self-preservation mode. My idea for this tournament, my idea in a lot of these positions has been and is that I am not fully confident in my calculations. So I could calculate here and try to find a forced win by giving checks. But I could also just blockade the pawn and win the pawn and not even have to worry about it. Basically not have to calculate anything. So I choose to blockade the pawn. And like fully knowing that it's probably not the most accurate move, but my idea is I'm gonna go rook c4 check on the next move and just force the winning of the pawn. So that's why he plays rook e4, blocking that check. But it also relinquishes some control of the back rank. So I just push c7, threatening to promote. He goes back, and knight d6 is lights out, and he resigns. Because, I mean, you're threatening this, you're threatening promotion, you're threatening, like, multiple ways of trying to give checkmate here. Yeah, like, f5 is just mate in one. This is just mate in one. Like, you can lose the rook, and it's still just mate. Like, yeah, this is just mate. Everything is mate, basically. It's not even just promotion. It's not even just the rook hanging. It's mate. So, it was really awesome getting to meet you in person, Alex. Thank you very much for the game. It was a blast being able to talk to you and stuff. I'm sorry that you couldn't play the second day of the tournament. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and switch into the game review. We're going to turn on the threats and eval bar. So Chesscom said I played this with a 87 and him 80. And I had 1 mistake and 2 inaccuracies. So these are book moves. Here is actually an inaccuracy where this is better because if he takes, I just play knight takes, and now it's different because it's coming with tempo on the bishop. So I think that, you know, if he hadn't played bishop f5, if he had played like this, no, it still wants knight f3. But I'm assuming that c3 here isn't as bad of a move. Yeah, c3 is a book move here. So it really just has to do with that minor nuance that the bishop is on f5 where it wouldn't normally be. So e6 is natural, knight d2 is natural, queen b3 right away is supposedly better, but we're talking about a difference of 0.08 on the eval. He goes here, queen c1, only a good move, g4 being best. You know, like there's a lot of these moves that I'm just going to ignore in the analysis. Because I don't see value in calculating g4. I'm not going to play that in a tournament. I'm sorry, I'm just not. Maybe in a blitz game. Knight gf3, only natural. Okay, let's see a4. At least this move kind of makes sense. a6, preventing bishop b5. Bishop e2 now. Perhaps knight gf. Knight c6. D takes. And now this is kind of like a... This is almost kind of like a reverse semi-Slav type of position. Bishop takes, and I'm sure we're going with b4 right away. Yeah, b4. And we're just getting massive tempo on the queen side. It's saying bishop e7 and b4 are kind of equivalent. So that's kind of an interesting idea. It feels like just kind of a different way to play. I don't necessarily see a big advantage in playing this way. But anyway, he plays knight c6, bishop e7, c4, only a good move. Definitely tipping it back in my favor. I think in general you want to keep this tension if you're black. I think taking can give you some pretty good ideas for attacking. You know, perhaps some ideas of bringing your knight into the center. In general, trying to play e5. You know, it's a Carlsbad pawn structure, so it's the standard ideas that come with that. Building for a center, or trying to play for a center build-up. Trying to play for a minority attack on the queen side. Those kinds of standard ideas. I think the plans here are pretty standard for black. But he pushes, and it wanted b3 right away. So I was kind of right on the money with my ideas of that. But this, I don't think that this was the first time, and I don't think that it's the last time in this tournament that I was kind of like, okay, let me make sure that my king is safe before I start doing all these pawn breaks. It just feels only natural. So now he goes knight h5, and I have to address this before I play b3. So I choose to go bishop e5, and I did analyze this line a little bit. Knight h4, supposedly better, where we play knight takes, e takes, g6, knight takes, and then according to the computer, this is the correct way to play, but that, you know, it says that my move is excellent, so I will stick with that move. He takes, which I definitely think is an inaccuracy. Pawn takes is better, again, because of what I said earlier. We're limiting the knight's ability to get back to that square, and that right now the knight is actually trapped. So that's why g6 is the best move for black, because let's say that he played something like bishop c5. we can just play knight d4, and the knight is completely trapped. So right here, the best move is bishop takes, e takes, to make sure that we're still controlling this square. And then bishop d3. Okay. I mean, the knight is still just trapped. Yeah, g4. Just relentless. Like, okay, you traded off my bishop, but now you have split pawns, and your knight is still trapped. That's a pretty crazy line. But none of that happens. I just take back with the knight. He goes knight f6, best move. b3, takes. Knight e4 being an inaccuracy, taking the best move. And here I have a very cool line to show you guys. So here, f3 is a great move. I was a little bit too scared to play f3 with the queen on this diagonal staring at my king. But you can actually play c4 right away here and hang this pawn. Because you're not really hanging it. Check this out. If queen takes, then we play bishop d1. Queen goes back. Okay, whatever. Let's say we push just for another tempo on the queen. Not necessarily the best thing. Here, queen c7. And the idea is bishop a4 check. And his king is forced off of its starting square. And here, f3, bishop g6, e4, his king's in the center, and not only that, it's stuck in the center, so it's just like crack everything open, go crazy. Bishop d1, absolutely beautiful move. It wanted bishop a4 check right away, in which case he can't even afford to go to d8, because if he does, he hangs this fork, so he has to come to e7. And then we give check on the dark square diagonal as well. Queen d6, best move, in which case we take, and then we have the fork anyway. King f6, second best move, in which case we play knight d7 check, picking up the queen. And I'm sure that we'll have another check to be able to save our own. Let me see here. King g6. Yeah, c5 here. Or this check. Okay, that's interesting. King f6. Okay, now it's just doing the weird engine thing where it's just giving repeating ideas. Knight d7, king g6. Yeah, it's saying knight e5 check again, so I think the c5 is just the best move. Queen c7, f3, and now the bishop's trapped. Yeah, I mean, this is just absolutely beautiful, analyzing this a little bit. So, these are the kind of moves that it's like, you know, I have a very natural plan. How do you not just play that natural plan? And I think that will just come to me with more experience. I think that this is a great learning lesson for me and anybody watching, that, you know, we are in a very not normal position. And in these not normal positions, you need to think critically about the differences between a normal position and the position that you're in. In a normal position, his bishop is out and he's castled, but he's not castled. So how can we exploit this? Well, his king is on a light square diagonal, and this whole entire side of the board is open, and the knight controls these two squares. So then, you know, perhaps after thinking about this, an idea like this might arrive. But that is, I don't even know how you find c4 as a candidate move, to be honest with you. But it's just encouragement to continue thinking critically in these non-standard positions. Bishop d6 is the best move for him here after queen b2. So all of that was based on queen b2, and queen b2 being a mistake. White is still having a slight edge after queen b2, but c4 is +2 because the king is so weak, and we're picking up a lot more material than the pawn that we're giving up. So bishop d6 after queen b2. And now we go knight f3, best move, castle's best move, rook fc1, best move, queen back to c7, lining up the battery. h3 here, not the most accurate. It wanted g3, which I feel like g3 is a very weakening move to make this early in the game, so I just chose, you know, not to do that. He goes rook fe8, c4. I mean, that's my idea. It's an excellent move. It's not the best. Rook a4. I mean, I don't even understand this. Not entirely sure why this encourages queen e7. I'm not going to read too much into that. c4 just seems so good. We already know why this is a blunder. Great move now. It's almost +5. Takes. Queen back. We're pushing. Best move. There are a couple ideas that I missed in playing this game that I wish that I saw sooner. Knight d2 is certainly one of them. Knight d2 is one of them, and now in this position, if I can get my knight to a better square, my bishop can come to a6 and cover the promotion square. And that's just an idea that I completely missed during the game. So those details are worth noting. g3, not the best. It wanted rook a6, e5. And here, it's not worth analyzing too much the moves. A lot of the ones that I played were best moves, which felt great. But it's, in the past couple moves, you know, it's gone from +4, and here we're all the way up at, you know, +6. And here we're at +8, because his king is so weak. It wanted knight g3 to just go for mate. Rook e1 check is the best move for him. King g2. Rook e5. And hold up, let me think about this for a second. I don't want to look at the side of the screen. I'm thinking check. Check here, check. I'm not seeing anything concrete. What if we played this right away? We hang on rook. Alright. Let's look at this check. Check here. We actually have this check because the rook is pinned. And then where does he go? Where the knight and the rook are aligned on the f6 square. So if he goes up here, if he goes up there, then we just take here and we're threatening mate. I don't think he has any way to stop it either. Yeah, I don't think he has any way to stop it. So that's if he goes up, and if he goes back, then I think the idea is that we just take with the rook, and then this rook is hanging. Okay, so rook f3 check is the best move. No, it's not. Rook d4 check is better. King g5. f4 check is a fork. King g6. F takes E and it's +34. Yeah, I mean, this is just... It doesn't even want to take back. Because of this check. That's insane. It wants F6, but that's still just hanging. C7. Yeah, I mean, obviously this doesn't warrant more calculation. I was just curious about the inaccuracy there. So this was an inaccuracy by me. Knight d6 is a move that can be played like a cajillion times in positions around here. For the reasons that I previously outlined, it opens up a line on the king. It attacks the rook. It defends the promotion square. You know, it's a pretty killer move. So when it comes in, you know, that's why this isn't an accuracy. And like I said, I knew that this wasn't the most accurate move, but it's just like, it's the difference between plus 8.6 and plus 6.5. I'll take it. So just pushing is okay, and now this is even this is only okay. But yeah, in this position, like I said, he resigned the game, and yeah, this felt amazing, honestly. Just to be able to go into round 3. This was the last round of the first day, third round, and it was the first longer game. So with the 3 rounds in one day, I was exhausted. I just felt like when I stood up from the tables and I went to walk to my hotel room and stuff, I felt like I was so tired that I was like drunk just from thinking so hard. And you know, you're playing these over the board tournaments and your heart is racing for like hours straight, and it really is exhausting, but it is also like exhilarating. So far in the tournament, we are 2-1. You'll have to stay tuned to see how I do in the last 2 rounds. The way that this tournament works is if you score a predetermined amount, then you will automatically get paid. It does not matter how you place. If you get 3.5 points, you get $50. If you get 4 points, you get $125. If you get 4.5 points, you get I don't remember what it was. I think it was like 250. It was like doubling every time you stepped up a half a point. But yeah, absolutely insane opportunities to win money. Basically, I'm only looking at the 3.5 and the 4 for the following games, and I'm like, okay, so tomorrow I need to win 1 and draw 1 minimum to be in the money. So that's my goal moving into day 2 of this tournament. And yeah, you'll have to come back tomorrow to see how I do in round 4, the first game of day 2. If you've made it this far into the video, don't forget to like and comment something. Please subscribe. It helps the channel out a ton. And I will be seeing you tomorrow.